Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Darren Newman Dialogues. Good to have you with us again for another week of great discussion. Hope you'll engage today and be a part of the conversation. We were just talking as we got started today about our pens and our notepads and how we're here today to lean in to our dialogue today, to our discussion, see if we can get some great information that will help our lives, that will help us move forward and find success and good direction in our lives. So we hope you'll take notes and get engaged and be involved as well. So if you're watching us today by YouTube, make sure that you like us, make sure you share this, make sure you hit that little bell icon. We always like to encourage you to do that so that you get notified when there's a new video uploaded. If you're listening by audio on any podcast platform, welcome. Good to have you with us on that as well. Wherever you are, thank you for reaching out to us and being a part of the show today. Dr. Newman, hello and welcome.
Hello, my friend. Week. Good to see you today.
Good to see you
beautiful
too.
Day. Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely.
Great to be here. And I love your word, lean in. I love that aspect to lean in, lean in, lean in. Yes. That's a great image.
It is.
That idea of leaning into the greatness of life and trying to discover something. It's kind of the subject that I've had on my mind when I was thinking about that, because it's springtime. Of course, if you're listening in the southern hemisphere, it's not, but it's coming into springtime here in the northern hemisphere, and we're leaning into the spring and the beautiful weather and the flowers and the in our part of the world. I was noticing this. I was talking about this to a few people. I've mentioned it before. It wasn't any discovery that I made this week, but you're noticing a lot of yellow and pastel purple, pastel yellow, pastel purple, that sort of color scheme. And it's really interesting for me that when we go into fall, those two colors will actually end up being the two dominant colors of fall in the flowers. You have and in the trees too, you have the yellowing. So I think of the goldenrod, and I also think of what we call the ironweed here, that is this deep, beautiful purple, very tall plants that appear in all around us. And I think that's really lovely. Sunflowers, of course, grow up during the summertime, but they have that beautiful color of yellow, and it's leaning into that beauty.
I like that.
Leaning into the greatness of life. You know, it's trying to discover things, uncover things in our lives. That helps us to lean into that greatness. So I appreciate that. That's a great thing. So I wanted to talk today. I've been thinking about. I was noticing something that happened the other day, which reminded me of these three subjects. Or 3 points, I should say. Not even points. They're just 3 aspects of life I want to encourage, that I'm encouraging within myself. As I've said before, if I ever make a point, it's always these fingers are pointing back to me. It's what's working for me, and if it works for me, hopefully it'll work for everyone else too. And that's the reason I'm sharing it from my heart. I have a camera that was given to me as a gift, and I appreciate it so much. That camera has meant a lot to me, and it has enabled me to look into the sky more, to see wonderful shots of the stars, even the planets, and sometimes I can even the Andromeda galaxy, when it's in view, it'll even pick up, where the camera will stay open. Of course, anybody who's ever worked with a camera knows that you can put it on a shutter speed that will hold the shutter open. It's like the eye of the camera will absorb all of the light. So if you ever go out and you just simply point up your camera to the stars and you just take the photo, you're not going to see very much, if anything at all. But if you hold the shutter open for merely 15 seconds, sometimes 30 seconds, you'll see a lot more, especially in the night sky. Now, of course, if you want the great precision, which is really interesting, if you hold this open, hold the shutter open, or if the shutter is open on the camera and you hold it there long enough, or it's in that stationary position where we're turning on the Earth, you'll actually get, if you take a photo at night of the stars will actually be streaks of light, which is really interesting. We don't detect that with our eyes because we're our eyes are constantly looking about, but the camera detects it. It's almost like the camera, interestingly enough, is revealing something that is far more than our eyes can tell or our brains can comprehend until we can see it. So with this instrument called the camera, we can capture so much of things going on around us that we might not notice. Now, I know this isn't all about photography, but it was just reminding me. I took a photo of one of the earliest dandelions, the dandelions that are growing here now. And the reason I say growing here now is because actually dandelions, if you look around them in the United States, they're actually imports from Europe. The little seeds were on the ships, of course. And so if you went back several hundred years, and I might be wrong about this, but if I'm not mistaken, the dandelion is actually what we call an invasive species. And, a lot of people, they try to eradicate it out of their yards because they want just this simple green. I'm going to confess, I love dandelions. I love what they are. It's a happy accident that they're here. I think they do a lot for the world, and I'm happy that they made their way. Unfortunately, it might have been some bad circumstances on which they've come, but I'm glad that they're here. And so out of sometimes bad things, like an invasive species, sometimes good things can occur. Now, I'm not trying to get up the dander of everybody, who wants to disagree with me on that, but just leave it as that. There's sometimes, if you trust nature and trust the wild, sometimes it can turn out okay if we can kind of get our hands away from it and let it happen and enjoy the show. Lean in. There's your key. Thank you, my friend, for mentioning that.
Surely.
So I took this photo of a dandelion. I did not know, and I took it close up, and I did the best I could with taking these close-up shots. And what I've noticed and I've taken several flowers and several points of nature that I see, which will be very small and intricate. When you take that photo, there was something that was so revealing in the texture of the dandelion leaves that they actually have. They have it's not stripes, but they are rigid. They're ridges on the little petals of that golden dandelion, and there are little places for the pollen, and of course that will grow up into the puffball that we know, where it floats off in a way. So this whole process, just so intricate and wonderful, that your eye, because we're so mixed up with this stuff going on around us, misses. So that's kind of the subject today. It's kind of leaning in. Thank you for that. Leaning in to discover something that you might not find at first glance. And this can become very interesting of a meaning for our lives too. I was thinking about this. So I want to give us three thoughts here about looking beyond, looking deep, and that there is something beyond the surface. So I'll repeat these as we go along, just for the simple fact of just trying to cover them. So this first thought I have of looking beyond, looking outside, looking, I don't know how to explain that other than looking outward. So let me go back on this philosophical subject. This comes up in philosophy, actually. So there's this great painting by Raphael di Urbino, I think was his name, full name, hangs in the Vatican, and it's called the School of Athens. And what it is Raphael's interpretation of all these philosophers, these ancient philosophers, primarily Greek, some Roman, maybe philosophers are in there, some people from other places and in the world that were on the search for wisdom that made it an indelible mark. But the interesting thing about the painting is they're not all contemporary. They're all scattered in time periods, but they're all appearing at this one painting. It's a huge painting. I don't know that it's life-size, but it's certainly large enough to capture all of these figures. Some of them are talking. Some of them are like looking on what somebody else is doing. I remember supposedly there is, some people think it is Euclid and he's drawing a geometric shape, and there are others looking on. You find Diogenes the Cynic on the steps. There's Epicurus. Trying to just think of the others. There's some people think that there are the four gospels in the painting. I invite you to look that up. It's called the School of Athens. It's easy to find on the internet. But it's not my point for the whole painting. There's two figures right in the middle. And that is Plato and Aristotle. Now, Plato is on the left, Aristotle's on the right. Plato actually has the face. I tell my students this all the time because it was my own research in listening to others as they explained the painting. It has the face, Plato, not it, but Plato has the face of Leonardo da Vinci, who Raphael who painted during the Renaissance, was giving homage to. And I think that's really profound. So there is Leonardo da Vinci on the body of Plato, and Plato is pointing upwards because he always philosophized about the divine and about the eternal soul, and the ideas, and the Platonic ideas it's called, or the forms, all of that. That's all philosophy. It's all what we study in Plato. But beside him, and to his left, to our right, is the figure of Aristotle. Aristotle was Plato's student. And Aristotle taught with Plato, learned with Plato for nearly 20 years, and then Plato died, and Aristotle went on and eventually started his own school of thought. But his hand is different. They're both pointing with their right hand, but they're pointing to something. This is really interesting. And those of you who are watching on video, you can see my hand with this one. So Plato is pointing upwards and looking directly to his left into the eyes of Aristotle, who's looking over his right shoulder and looking directly at Plato, just eye to eye. And if you know anything about philosophy, they're in total disagreement about where we should concentrate. Now, I've always loved Plato. I've always loved the eternal things because of my background in theology, studies that I've done. And I studied Plato. But it's Aristotle I want to look to. His hand is actually pointing downwards. It's actually out from him, sort of like just shoved out. I'm going to try to do it on the camera here, but it looks something like that. His hand, actually, it's the left hand, so it's something like that. And he's looking directly at Plato. There. So the question is, what's he pointing to? Or what's he indicating? Well, Raphael is so clever with this hand motion that I've often said that you can talk about all of Western philosophy's disagreements from the position of those two hands. Both of them actually, I think it might be the right hand. I might have that's wrong. I might be just right when I say it might be in the left, in the right hand. So be it. It's the hand is pointing this way, right? So all of Western philosophy is a disagreement or an agreement, or trying to somehow bridge these two things, where our study of the eternal and that which lies above us and that which is right here with us in the earth. So you could talk about God and the world, or our souls and our bodies, or something like that, right? It goes back and forth. You can just play with this all day. But it's Aristotle that I want to see as profound today, because he has something to say about this. Aristotle was all about the senses, all about nature, all about discovering wisdom, not in some eternal world, but interacting through and by our senses with the world around us, with the world of nature. So thus, he not only writes on these grandiose things like metaphysics and logic, he also writes on zoology, biology, and the study of the earth, like things that make sense, things that we can observe. We can see them, hear them, smell them, taste them, touch them. And I became aware of this the more I've studied about nature and my love of nature, the more I've learned to appreciate that idea of using our senses to discover the world around us and outside. Again, I point back to the springtime and leaning into the spring. But how often we escape out of life by watching screens today that activate nothing really of three senses other than the eye gate and the ear. And then even that is contrived because we're listening to the sounds through electronic speakers, and we're seeing the images through electronic media, and we're captivated by that. And it kind of goes down to, not in a scolding way, I hope, to myself, and I hope nobody listening will take this in this way, but I want to point back to myself. I have wasted a lot of times, a lot of days, by watching screens and not feeling all of my senses, right? There's this sense where this is being alive. That is not. I mean, it is being alive, but it's a poor imposter at times, because it's always trying to mimic what we see. Isn't that interesting? We're always trying to get our cameras to be the right tone, like we were doing even before we went on. We got to make sure we look okay. Is my camera okay? Can you hear me all right? See it? But if we were together, we would be just talking, we would be listening and engaging in that dynamic. There's something that I don't want to say that we miss necessarily, but that we should cherish. That's it. Don't scold us into being that we miss it because we're spending too much time on screens. Screens are wonderful, but so is living and life and using those senses that you have been given. I remember taking a run one time in the hills, and when I first started out, I I noticed that it looked a bit cloudy. And this happened to me several years ago, and there were a couple of neighbors' dogs, weren't ours or mine or anybody's. They were the neighbors' dogs, and they would always run with me. They'd always meet up, and this was a grand thing to do in the mornings, because I would bike or run, through the hills, and it was really great. I remember this one time that I decided, well, I'm going to put in this quick run, and I'll run and it'll be okay, and I'll beat the rain and all of that. And so I made it out to this one point, and I was taking a break because it was the end point of that first leg. Like, you go out to that one point and then you go all the way back. Now again, this is through the hills, through the woods. It's in nature. So I'm standing out there and we're all by ourselves. The dogs were with me and I'm looking around. I'm in the middle of countryside. There's not a house around me. I can't see anybody. I can't, so I'm in the middle, but I see this cloud coming along across the woods, and I heard this sort of roar sound. And I thought, what is that? And I started looking around, and of course, I see this mist coming. And I thought, that's rain. And before I could even start thinking about, we need to get back, it became a torrential downpour. The lightning was through the skies. The thunder was rumbling. And I took off running, and I told the dogs, I said, come on. So we took off running. We ran through that rain, and the hill that I had gone down, which had a path on it, had instantly become mud. So I was crawling up that way. The dogs were cowering because they didn't know really what was going on. I went into the woods. I kept on running, and I finally got back home, and it was still raining, probably not as much as that thunderstorm that was just almost immediate. But as I reflected upon that after this long story I've gotten through telling everybody, that was the finest run I've ever had. That was the most memorable, and that happened years ago. I would do that again. Love that, because my senses were alive. I could hear the thunder, I could see the lightning, I could feel the rain. I was taking in air through my nose, my mouth. And of course, it was so much rain that you could actually taste it because it was running down my face. And I thought, how much it is and how sweet it is to be alive. And that is something I'm leaning in. So look beyond that theme of looking beyond all of these things that we have going on in the world, and tragic as they are. But there is sometimes that you've got to look on and say that there will be a brighter day, and I'm going to make it so. There's that sense of, and I don't mean that in some sort of pathetic, ambling way that's just like, go off and have a nice day. But I am very, I don't think we give ourselves credit enough at how far we can see ahead, at how alive we are in nature, and how that the worth of screens can be put back in its place, and every talking head that is on that screen diminishes greatly. Because and I have to remind myself of this, any person upon the planet, and I know we have troubling times from tyrants going on today, if you meet them, they're just people. They're just like you. And that diminishes them, because we're leaning into the greatness of nature and who we are, and using our senses and what Aristotle was talking about, becoming alive. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to answer the world's problems, but it sure as well gives me some hope that there will be something coming on, because no matter what happens, that spring will keep on rolling. Summer will keep on coming. That dandelion will keep on blossoming, right? It's that beautiful surge that it keeps on going, and that gives people hope for what it's worth. It certainly gives me hope that you're not that big, right? You can't overcome that. That's coming from Aristotle. That's what I'm getting from that, just that hand motion. What is he pointing to? He's pointing to the earth. So we have to become attentive. alive, looking beyond. Look at the stars, look beyond ourselves. So that's the first one I'm thinking about. Now, I don't have the time to keep on talking about that. I don't, because there's so much there. And again, I'm not naive, and I don't want us to think naively that just look beyond, or something like that's going to answer every problem that you've ever had. But sometimes by taking a walk underneath the stars and looking at the sky and feeling the spring, looking beyond that which you're going through, looking to that next mountain, looking over the hillside, looking at something beyond you, then will, I don't know, somehow encourage you. All right, here's the second one. The second one is to look deep inside, to look deep within. Now, this goes down to something, this might be more Platonic, I don't know, but I've met a lot of thinkers, and I've talked with a lot of people. I've taught a lot of people. And there's one thing I've noticed in teaching. One of the most I call them one of the most awfulest ways of coming to education or coming to learning, leaning in, shall we say, to use your word, my friend. It's not to see it's not to look, it's to escape looking deep inside of your hearts and feeling something and thinking that your opinion is worth all of the gold on the planet. That it's not that it isn't valuable, but I've met so many people that think they have all of the answers because it makes sense to them, and they'll talk about things as if that they're these grand truths. But if you just kind of deeply look inside yourself and start feeling that, like, what would that mean to my life? You're going to come up with maybe something that you need to learn or take into consideration. If anything, and this might be a sort of obscure point that I'm thinking about, but if we look deep within inside of our thoughts, I think there's something very precious there that can guide our lives. I think it goes into this idea of looking beyond, because what happens when we look beyond is we feel something deep inside of us. On the website on our mission here, we have wonder, wisdom, and the wild, of course, and when you're looking out in nature, it's not by accident that we put wonder there and wisdom, because those are tied in. The wild, wonder, wisdom. If you're not aware of this, there is a tie, right? They all three flash off of one another. And if you think about it, the wonder and the wisdom is something that is, wonder is something that you feel, wisdom is something that you obtain, and the wild is something that you engage with by looking beyond yourself and leaning into it, like the springtime. But when you see a flower, when you feel the warm winds or look at the beautiful stars, there's something that awakens within you, something of strength, something of power, something of wonder, something of joy, of beauty, because you feel beauty. You not only see it, you feel it. See, that's what you can't just simply say, look beyond yourself, look out there. Man, it's what you're feeling. And I think that there's something very beautiful at Aristotle, not that this is Aristotle's day, but he calls it catharsis. He says that when we see a play, when we see a great movie, when we read a great book, when we see a great work of art, and I'll even put it, when we see something so grand and beautiful, whatever it is, maybe it is the stars or feel the wind, there's there's a catharsis takes place. Now I know what he means by it, that he says that, like, the way he explains it is when we see something, see if I can explain this quickly. When we see something on a film that we have never, say, been through, we will go through emotions similar to what it might be had we be actually, if we were actually going through it. And that helps us to deal with the inside emotions. That's called catharsis. Catharsis actually, doesn't it have a connotation of almost purging? There's a purging effect, a catharsis, a purging, a getting it all out of you kind of thing. If some scholars are listening and they want to count me wrong, that's fine, but I'm going to go with this because we're thinkers too. So I'm going to say this, that when you look beyond, you feel something deep inside of you, and that is richly and undoubtedly yours to feel. And I want you to experience that. I want to encourage you to experience that and feel the joy, feel the beauty, feel what it means to know the truth, but deal with it in such a way that it applies to life. Don't be like the people I have even taught that come into a class thinking they know everything and not really feeling it. They think that just because it works out logically and because they can say it, that's truth. Just simply because they think it. Because when you hear something and it is beautiful and it is of the truth, it'll move you. See, it's gonna be deep inside of you. You know, when Jesus even said, "The truth shall set you free," that's meaningful, right? When Pilate, and we're coming into Easter, when Pilate faces Jesus and he says, "What is truth?" When Jesus had talked about the people that follow him are of the truth, Pilate says, "What is truth?" Jesus says nothing. And I'm wondering, for one aspect of that, not to answer this question, but maybe it is that even if he had said something, he knew he wouldn't get it because he couldn't feel it. Because, see, he was a person on a quest for power. He was a political figure. He was a politician. If there are any politicians listening, I'm sorry, but that's what he was. He was a seeker of power, not a servant. He loved that position. Right? When you do that, see, you're not looking beyond, you're looking at what here. And that feeling of depth, see it, I don't know that you can feel it. So again, look deep inside and relish that, because that's yours. And at the end of, when we come down to the end of our days, it's not going to be how many screens we watched, how many points we proved, how we made somebody feel dumb, and they'll look down. I've noticed sometimes when people are being overlorded by this stuff, that their gaze goes down. No, grab hold of wonder, grab hold of that wisdom within you and look them straight in the eye. That's a beautiful thing about, I remember when I lived in Scotland, when they begin to dance, the Scottish dances would always begin with a bow, but they would look you straight in the eye. I love that. They said that it goes back down to the times that they were conquered, and they would look straight into the eye of the conqueror. Like I might dance for you right now, but yeah, I still got you. I'm looking right here. I'm not going to bow see that? I'm not going to bow. I'm not going to look down because you're not worthy of that. I'm going to look you straight in the eye. Mm-hmm. See, that's interesting. Wolves will watch your eyes. They'll look you straight in the eye and they're watching you. Where I feed the deer here, the white-tailed deer, always notice that they'll watch my gaze. And I always have to look down to to show them I come humbly to you. I just want to help you, because if I lock eyes, see, they're going to recognize that. It's almost like a challenge, right? It's strength. And they're very peaceful animals. They don't want to face strength because they know it's not going to end well, for them, from their history and from them communicating with each other, I'm sure of. But you don't look down. Look up with joy. Look up with beauty. I know that sounds, excuse my expression, I know that sounds like a Hallmark card, but it's not. There's something rich in that there's something deep inside that I want you to get hold of. Now, let me go back all the way back to my dandelion. And this is my last one. This point I'm thinking about. There is so much more below the surface. That's my final truth today. Look beyond. That's something that you can do. Look deep inside. That's something you can do. But here's the truth. There's so much more beyond the surface. So much. And I mean that in every sector of society. Again, back to the screens. We live in these shallow lives. We think that that's the way that it is. But it's not. You don't know what that feels like. See it? You don't know what that smells like, it's just very shallow. And again, back to the person that thinks they know everything. You don't. You do not. And if you think that, and I've met plenty of people, and I just want to say this, all this stomping around that people do, all this this pruning of themselves, these figures that think themselves as very powerful, and they prance and they stomp and they look proudly and all of that. There's a lot more here, man. There's a lot more, and you're not that. See, you're not that. You think that you might have it. You're not. No. There's a whole lot more going on below the surface. Back to my little dandelion. People look at the dandelion and say, that's just dandelion, that's dandelion, it's dandelion. But did you know that it has the ridges on the petals? Did you know that? Do you know where it came from? Do you know what it smells like? I know that you might not like the smell, or somebody might, but do you even try to get to understand it? See it? There's so much more beyond the surface. Isn't that a great way to look at life? Isn't that a great way for relationships?
Yes.
There's so much more than this. And so we've got this together today. That, like, you'll see a person, you don't know the backstory, you don't know how it got here, you don't know that person, you don't know how this is all occurring, you don't know. You'll read it in a book and you think that works out. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm gonna go with that because I know the truth. I know everything. No, you do not. No, you don't. Lean into the beauty, but know that beauty is deep and profound. There's so much more beyond the surface. If you keep that truth within you, I think you will discover a much richer world, a much more wonder-filled world, a much more intricate world, a much more, I don't know, astounding world. I can't tell you enough. I mean, it's just like this. I don't know. Enjoy it. Get out there. Just stand strong. Lean in. Come on. Help somebody. Get the story out. Stand strong. I mean, let me say one last thing here. And I know of the times, and I'm not trying to be naive by any of these statements, but I know the power and the sway that people have. I know that some people have a lot of sway and power. Some tyrants will gloat in that. They're only as strong as the as the number of followers. If you just quit following, then they just become this tired, angry individual sitting in a corner. If the bully doesn't have any audience, there's nothing to be a bully about. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
If you stand against the bully, there's nothing to bully. So by leaning in, by looking beyond, getting strength, looking deep inside, and there's more beyond the surface. Stand up there, man. Come on, stand up, enjoy it, lean into it. All these little small-minded things, all these little screens, just kind of ebbs away. So that's my declaration today in trying to take some things back that are there, because that spring keeps on rolling and those warm winds are coming. And I know I keep on celebrating this because I live in the Northern Hemisphere, but we've been through winter, right? It's time for some warmth. It's time for some sunshine. It's time for some beauty. That's what I'm thinking today. Look beyond, look deep. There's far much more beyond the surface.
Fantastic. I love a couple of things you said today. One, talking about the screens, being a guy who's in digital media, this goes deep into my heart, because I think as a culture, we've lost a lot by retracting and living our lives from screen to screen. And I think there's a lot of missed opportunity where we have a difficulty going beyond what we see on the screen and looking deep inside and going beyond the surface. That's very difficult to do in a digital connection. I remember my daughter, the first time several years ago, when she broke up with a boyfriend over text. And I was, no, don't do that. We always go face to face. But to her defense, she said, this is the communication we have now, this is the generation's communication. And of course, we do everything now over text and do everything over. But those are the challenges that we have. We're going to have to, I think, get very intentional as a culture to go deep, to find things from one another and in life. We've got to get out from in front of these screens and embrace life and be part of as you've talked about it, get into the wild, go for a walk, and look for the things that life brings to us. So that was one of the things I thought about. And you said, get out there. And I thought that was very, very good.
I appreciate you saying that, but I didn't mean to be ironic on that, because I'm saying that on a screen. Isn't that weird?
Well,
I never caught up my irony yet.
Yeah.
Maybe the irony of that would be, well, let me put it this way, get out of the irony. Screens are beautiful because they can do so much for us, like through education and through what we're doing here. We can reach so many people through the media that you provide.
Sure.
However, what we come to talk about, I think we can bring this in. We don't come to talk about screens. We come to talk about life. We're just doing it through the medium. And that's what I've always thought about your great work, is a putting the message out there. And it's the medium, but it's the joiner. It's this. We can reach so many people that might need to hear some encouraging words, but we would never reach them without the screen and without the technology that you provide. Absolutely. So there seems to be an irony there, but I don't want to just take away, the greatness of the tool.
Sure.
It's
I think that's a good point to make too. And I think that's, I think obviously digital screens and digital technology has its place. I think the word comes to my mind is balancing that with, it's okay to partake of things on screens and communicate with screens.
Sure, there it is.
The way you talked about connecting with humans and connecting to one another, there's just a real difficult time doing that from screen to screen. So you need to create those deep relationships in your life.
Yeah.
And then looking into those leaders, I think that getting beyond the surface, there's a lot of people who claim to be leaders out here in the world, and people who,
Yeah.
are trying to generate followers. And, somebody said to me one time, if you think you're a leader, turn around. If no one's following you, you've just gone for a long walk. And I think
Yeah,
that's,
that's
that's
true.
true. That's true. To be a true leader sometimes is to bring up the rear, is to come from behind, to
Sure,
encourage and to
absolutely.
strengthen. And so
It,
I think there's a lot more to our lives if we will just take a moment and dig in. And the last thought I had was this, and I don't mean to take a lot of time, but these are
no,
things
you're
that
fine, my
that
friend.
burn in
Thank
me
you.
sometimes when I hear you speak.
Sure.
Is that we have to move beyond just drudgery and day to day and this numbness that we find ourselves in. I think the Western culture
Mhm,
has
mhm,
found its way into just, we're so comfortable. We have so much at our disposal.
mhm,
We
mhm,
have lost the desire or the even the natural ability to seek, to hunger, to go after
mhm,
things. And so
mhm,
it takes
mhm,
a shaking, I think, today. We'll shake ourselves and wake ourselves today
mhm,
to
mhm.
go deeper and beyond. So those
Got
are
to
the
get
things
hungry
that I
again,
thought. Yeah,
maybe.
I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Go
Lean
out.
in, be
Yeah,
intentional.
that's right. That's right. Lean in. That's the great line for today. On a leader is something different than an office holder, and of course, a tyrant is just an office holder on some sort of crazy. I sort of say on steroids. I don't know that that's true or not, but I know this, that a leader is a giver who
Mhm.
gives, doesn't demand, it gives, and the leader pours out, the leader sacrifices, the leader's a part of the action, not sitting behind some desk or megaphone or screen and calling for action that others would take. They're a part of the action themselves.
Mhm.
And but there is something there that in leadership that they want to give to the people, to look beyond, to look deep inside, and that there's much more here. I mean, a leader, being a great teacher, knows that wisdom won't be found in a single day, or but we're going to build something that is significant and beautiful for life. It makes up a better life. It leads us to a better place. It doesn't lead to giving me more power. That's an office holder. That's a tyrant.
Mhm.
It doesn't lead for me just getting your vote. It means that I take you to a place that is better for you, not better for me. I don't make more. That's not a leader. I don't get stuff from that. I get stuff from the give. I get a blessing from the giving. It's a
Yeah.
grand difference. And I too have seen a lot of people call themselves leaders, and they're nothing of the sort. It's just a grand word that they've picked up on that makes them sound more grandiose in what they're doing. It's actually hiding, again, looking more deeply,
Mhm.
it's hiding what they're really after.
Yeah.
And we need to say that. I mean, I I make a point about it, and people can disagree with me. I hope that you do, else we don't grow. But I don't like people that simply get into a position and calling themselves a leader, whether they get voted in or whatever. A leader is proven out by the life. An office holder just occupies the office. And there's a difference in that. A leader is taking the people someplace, like you said, following. You're actually kind of, you're not up front because you're just, you're 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 almost not the follower is walking alongside you. They just get richness off of what you're saying, and
Mhm.
they come because you hold something very valuable for them, and so you're taking them on that journey. You're on the journey too, and it's a beautiful thing. Being a
Mhm.
leader is bandied about a lot, but really leadership is going that mark, making a difference, helping people, teaching, exemplifying all of these things. And that is where we really need to think very deeply about what we're doing, because it's easy to put words. It's easy to call yourself a leader. You can do so on the screen. I can put down below leader, right? But it's only as good as that two-dimensional thing. I haven't seen it. I don't know. I haven't heard you do anything. I mean, I haven't felt anything. I mean, I don't know that I have a better life because of you. I don't care what you're calling yourself. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful spiritual truth there. All great religious and philosophical leaders have always, and I say leaders because they've made lives better. They've talked about just what we were talking about today, looking beyond, looking deep within, and there's much more here to learn.
Absolutely.
Looking beyond the surface, and that is something beautiful for us to remember, and again, take strength in, take heart in, that we're doing something significant instead of just simply, I don't know, just kind of thinking, well, that's entertaining. We're actually changing lives. So enough about that.
I love that. I love all that. And I think that if you're watching or listening today and you've got some thoughts about this, we'd love to hear your feedback.
Yes,
love to hear your
please,
comments on these. And we may have a question or two that you can answer. If you're friends of the broadcast and you love what you're hearing, we love to hear that. Encouragement's always good for everyone. If you're an opposer, that's okay too. You've got opposition thoughts,
absolutely.
and you've got things. In fact, as Dr. Newman mentioned, it's embraced. We hope you do have some thoughts of your own, independent, and you can come and bring that dialogue along with us as well. Dr. Newman, any final questions for folks to think about, or practicality for today's thoughts?
I appreciate that. Maybe even think of how one of these aspects is echoing in your life or making an impact in your life. Maybe a situation that you could apply. How are you looking beyond maybe an aspect? If looking beyond, like you're seeing that truth or that encouragement to look beyond, to lean in to the world around you and what you're discovering about your life or something in the world that you would like to share. We would love to hear that. Or maybe something deep inside of a truth you're experiencing or discovering, and it's meaning something into your wonder and your wisdom. Love to hear that. Or maybe that the truth of that something beyond the surface, something that you're finding out, that you're thinking about, and that has really awakened you to a better sense of life for yourself, better days, better happenings. I don't know how to put that other than happenings, occurrences in your life. If any one of those three, and you would care to share, we would love to hear that, what you're thinking about. That sponsors the dialogue, that helps us to address more questions. And if you have a question that you would like to get some insight from, we're all part of the dialogue. And if you have a subject for a dialogue, maybe we could help help you think more clearly. It's never written in stone. It's always a dynamic process. It's living, it's growing, just like that beautiful spring. And so there's much more here to learn, to do, to understand, all through the wonder, wisdom, and the wild. I would encourage everybody to do that.
Absolutely. I don't think it could be said any better. So with that, we'll just thank you for your time today. Thank you for
thank you very much.
Of this conversation and this dialogue. We hope you'll join us again. Watch for us on YouTube, watch for us on our podcast, check out our Facebook page. Make sure you get over to the website as well. All of these links and information are found in the show notes. We'll make sure those are there for you as well. And join us next time, if you will, for the Darren Newman Dialogues.
Thank you, everybody. Make it beautiful.